Hey guys, Alton here. I want to welcome you to my YouTube channel and to the third episode of our Ethical Hacking for Beginner series. So in this video, we're going to get into some Nmap fun. We're going to do some scanning. You're going to learn the basics of Nmap. So now that we have our lab set up and I've walked you through the basic methodology of a pen test, now we're going to jump into some actual scanning. So let's go ahead, let's jump over to my screen and let's get started. All right, so let's go ahead and let's get to it. So first thing that I want you to do, start up all of your virtual machines. So mine are already up and running. I have my Kali machine here on the screen. My XP machine is loaded. My Metasploitable machine is loaded. And my OWASP Broken Web Apps machine is loaded. So all four of them are loaded. I want to make sure that you have them up and running as well if you want to follow along. Now, we don't actually need to look at these unless we want to refer to their IP addresses. So I am going to go ahead and minimize them. And one thing actually I do want to point out, let me pull them back up before I keep them minimized. So I already ran the ipconfig and ifconfig commands on them. I want to take note as we go through this so you're aware of some of the things on here. So the IP addresses of these are respectively 192.168.0.4, we have the .0.5 and .0.6, and our default gateway, our router, is going to be our .1 IP address. So make sure you keep those in mind because it's going to be important once we start working with Nmap. And then also, if we take a look in our system here on our Kali machine, our address is .7. So keep that in mind that we have the .7, we have .6, we have .4, and we have .5. So we're essentially going from IP address 4 up to 7. And that's going to be important because of what we're going to notice when we do some network scans. Now, let me go ahead and close out the terminal. So let's get back to talking about Nmap, which I mentioned at the beginning of the video. So what we're going to do in this video is we're going to do some network scanning. So in terms of the pen testing methodology, we start with the pre-engagement and engagement activities, and we move to the information gathering. The information gathering, then after that we move to the footprinting / fingerprinting / port scanning / operating system enumeration. And we are in the fingerprinting, footprinting, port scanning, operating system enumeration portion of this methodology because we aren't actually working with an organization, so we're not going to be doing any sort of pre-engagement activities such as defining the scope, what we are supposed to scan, what we're not supposed to scan, and when we can scan it, what they're going to tell us, and so forth. And we're not working with the real company, so there's no passive reconnaissance that we can do on that organization. So we're jumping to scanning the network and enumerating the network and all of that. And Nmap is a very good tool to utilize to do that, and it's open source and it's commonly used, and it's not only used for security professionals, IT administrators, network administrators, lots of people in IT use it. So let me go to the main page, and it looks like both of these are on the download. Let me go to the main page and we'll scroll down. And Nmap stands for Network Mapper. It's free and open source. It's been around for a long time. There's a command line interface, and there's also a GUI called Zenmap. And it's utility for network discovery and security auditing. And we're going to utilize it for network discovery in this video, and also security auditing, where we are auditing the different versions of the services that are up and running, and if we can find vulnerabilities, then we're identifying vulnerabilities. So that's the purpose of this tool. Now, in terms of it, so one thing I do want to mention is, let me scroll this over. If the interface looks a bit different, it's because I installed the GNOME GUI interface, and I'm not going to show you how to do that in this video series, but I'll put a link down below in the description. So in my other series, my Linux Fundamental series, I have a video on how you can switch from the KDE to the GNOME interface. And the reason I did it is because primarily with Terminal, with the latest edition, the 2020.3 version of Kali, resizing the font size and terminal. There's issues with it where it doesn't take effect when you do it in the preferences, and because I am recording the screen, I want to be able to size up and size down the size of my terminal as needed as we go through this, just because it's easier to read on the screen. So anyways, wanted to quickly state that one thing that we do need to do with this is we do need to install something called Zenmap. So the command line interface, the terminal interface comes with Kali Linux, but the GUI interface doesn't, and the GUI interface is called Zenmap. So I want to walk you through the process of doing this. So it's very simple. It's probably take a few minutes. Let's get started. So first thing is you want to download the Zenmap RPM file. Simply go to nmap.org, go to the download page. So nmap.org, click on the download page, which I already have open over here. You're going to scroll down to the Linux RPM source in binaries, which is around halfway down, and then you're going to look for where it says Zenmap GUI all platforms, and this is a file that you want right here. Right click it, save as, and put it in your downloads folder. I already downloaded it. It's not that big of a file, so download that file, and then we're done with the browser. Then we want to open up Terminal, and again, make sure that you are logged in with your root account, that you're not logged in with the default Kali account, because we want root privileges. And we're going to go through and we're going to do a few commands. So we're going to do the apt install alien. It's going to prompt you for a yes here. Let me actually size up the font size a little bit on this. So hit yes, let it do its install. Should probably take about a minute or two. Once that's done, we're going to change the directory and terminal to our downloads folder. So once we get to our downloads folder, then we can verify that this file is in there. We'll do an ls-l command, which is going to list the contents. We'll make sure that's in there, and then we'll run alien on it again to extract the Debian file. Then we'll do an ls.l again, and then we will depackage it to install it, and then we can type in Zenmap to confirm that the install is correct. So let's go ahead and clear the screen. Let's change to our download directory. Let's do an ls-l. You notice that the file is there. And let me actually scroll this over. This right here is Cherry Tree. So you'll notice Cherry Tree right here. This is a note-taking software application that comes with Kali. I like using this both in Kali and on my Windows machine. So you're going to see me using this a lot, and we'll probably also use it in this series as I start enumerating the systems and finding information about them. I'll probably put them in here as well. I recommend that you utilize this as well. It's a great tool. It's a great note-taking software app, and definitely I highly recommend it. So now we're going to do alien on this RPM file, and a nice little neat trick is if you highlight this and that little center scroll wheel on your mouse, if you just click that, it'll put that down into here, and we can hit enter, and we'll let this run, and then we'll do an ls.l. It says that our Debian file is generated, and you'll notice that it's here. Now we're going to do the depackage command, which you see right here with I, and then we're going to depackage to install this Debian file, and looks like everything is done. We will type in Zenmap, and we can verify that Zenmap has installed correctly, and we can close it, and we can go ahead and we can clear out the terminal. We don't need to actually close it. You're going to notice over here that Zenmap has popped up onto our favorites as well. So we can get to Zenmap from here, or we can go up to here. We can search for it. We can type in Zenmap, and Zenmap as root. We can click that to open it, and Zenmap is going to open. So we have Zenmap installed, and we also have default version of Nmap installed as well up here. So if I type in Nmap, you're going to notice that it gives us lots of information, lots of switches. If I type in the manual page for Nmap, there is a lot of information in here. You could spend weeks upon weeks learning about all the nuances of Nmap. We're just going to do the basics. And one thing I want to point out is we already know the IP addresses. The whole purpose of this is to start scanning our network. So remember, keep those in mind. I'm actually going to go down here and I'm going to add a new node. I'm going to say the IP addresses that we already know. So we know that our gateway is and let me make sure that I have my numlock on. Our gateway is a 192.168.1 address. And I'm going to go ahead and put this in here so we have it, because I think it's important to start taking notes. And one way we can double verify that here as well is we can just type in the route command with the -n, and that makes sure it doesn't do name resolution. And you're going to notice that the default gateway for this network is 192.168.0.1. Now this is important because you're going to notice once we start doing Nmap scans that VirtualBox puts together specific IP addresses for this virtual network that we don't need. So let's talk about doing a basic scan. We'll work in the command prompt, and then I'll show you how you can use a GUI as well on some of these. So with this, and let me scroll this over a little bit and scroll this back because I want you to see the syntax. So the syntax basically for Nmap is type in Nmap. If you have switches you want to use, you can put those into there, and then you put an IP address or an IP range in there. So the most basic way of running this is simply typing in Nmap, and let's say that we wanted to scan this entire subnet. We know this is a /24 network because we're on a Class C network, and let me open up a new terminal and I'll do an ifconfig. You'll notice that our subnet mask is a 255.255.255.0. That is going to be a Class C network, which is a /24. So one thing that I want you to keep in mind as we start getting into this, if you're not familiar with networking, if you don't know how IP version 4 schemas work, meaning Class A, Class B, Class C, what the subnet mask is, what CIDR block notation is, do a bit of research on your own, do some studying on your own because you need to know this stuff. It's pretty basic, it's simple to understand. I have some classes on it. I won't link to them in this series, but I do have some videos on my YouTube channel that you can watch some of this stuff as well. So we know that we're on a Class C network. So when we do /24, we're essentially saying this subnet mask. And so let's close out, and looks like I closed the wrong terminal, so let me resize this again. So let's do our Nmap, and we're going to say that I want to scan this entire subnet. But if I do this without any switch, it defaults to the default scan. And I don't want to do the default scan just yet. I want to start with a basic ping scan, meaning tell me what systems are going to respond. And this switch, we can put it in the front, we can put it in the back, doesn't matter. We're going to go ahead and we're going to run that. And this is going to give us a baseline idea of how many systems. And you'll notice down here that it says that it scanned this entire Class C range of 256 IP addresses and found 7 hosts that are up. Well, we know we only have 4 systems, right? We have our XP, we have Metasploitable, we have our OWASP Broken Web Apps, and we have Kali. So what in the world are all the other systems? So we know we have .7, .6, .5, and .4. What is .3, .2, and .1? Well, we know that .1 is our router. And we're not looking to enumerate and fingerprint and learn things about the router that VirtualBox created. So we can exclude that from future scans. These two are IP addresses that VirtualBox is using for our virtualized network, so we can ignore those together. So we can ignore IP addresses 1 through 3, and we only really want to scan 4, 5, 6, and 7. So with that said, we can actually adjust this, and let me go ahead and put our SN at the beginning. And what I'll say is we want to scan 192.168.0.4 to 7. And not 44 to 7, but .4 to 7. And what you're going to notice is now it only scanned those 4 different devices. And when I just list the IP address range, I don't have to actually put the subnet mask in. Now let me show you a way that we can actually clean this up if we wanted to have a list. So we can actually use our grep to clean this up. So we pipe into grep, and let's say that we want to do nmap scan. And what this does is that now it's only showing where it starts with nmap scan. So all this other stuff, the MAC addresses, and all that stuff is removed out of there. We can even go a bit further. And I have all this right here in Cherry Tree as well. As I'm typing it, you can see that, and you can reference that. So what we're doing with here is we're actually cutting so it only shows what's in the 5th position. And so you'll notice that there's 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5. It looks at this as 5 different sentences, and what's in the 5th position is the IP address. And when we do this, now we only get a list of IP addresses. Well, what if we want to put this into some sort of a text file or something? Well, what we could also do here is we could go into Cherry Tree, and I could say IP addresses to scan. I could go ahead and put them in here as well for notes. But I could go back to here, and I can redirect it to a specific file. So what we can do to redirect it is I will do the greater than symbol, and we're saying we're redirecting this, and let's put it on our desktop. So root desktop, and we'll call this nmapscan.txt. We'll just keep it as that, and we'll let it run. Thought about changing it, but I think that's fine for now. Now if we change our directory, if we go back 1 and we go to desktop and we list the contents, you'll see that it's there. We can run a cat command. Now if these commands, the ls and cat, if these are commands you don't know what they are, go over to my Linux Fundamental series here on YouTube and learn the basic commands that I'm talking about. Pretty basic commands, you should know them. If you don't know them, go to that series, and it's going to teach you these basic commands. So here's the contents of that file, and if we scroll this over, here's that file as well. So it's always nice to have that for our records, and let me get this over here so it's on the screen. So that's our basic ping scan. Now let's talk about port scans. And let's actually increase the font size a little bit, and let's bring this over. And let's talk about port scan. So the ping scan essentially pings the devices to see who's responding. Now we want to go a bit further from that, right? We want to actually learn about these systems. We want to actually see what ports are open, what services are running on those. That's where these port scans come into play. And what we can do with all of this is we can do a variety of different port scans. I'm only showing you a couple here. They're probably, I would say, off the top of my head, and I'm looking at a cheat sheet, around 6 different types of port scans, maybe more than that with Nmap. But I'm just going to show you a couple. The default one is what's called the SYN scan. Now, if you don't know how the TCP/IP three-way handshake works, definitely do some review on that as well. So the way that it works, that you'll see right here, is that if somebody wants to communicate somebody where they're utilizing TCP, the person that wants to communicate, let's say that we're a host machine, we want to communicate with a web server, we'll send a SYN command to them saying, hey, I want to start a session. They'll respond with an acknowledgement, which is a SYN ACK, and then we'll respond with an acknowledgement with them that we received it, and the session will start. Well, the way that Nmap works is they have one that's called the SYN scan, where it gets to the second part of the three-way handshake, and then it doesn't complete it, resets it. This is considered to be stealthier than the second option, which is a TCP connect scan, where it connects the entire connection for that session, then it does a reset to stop it. So these are 2 different ones. For what we're doing here, either of them are going to be fine. You could do the SS or the ST, doesn't matter. But in a production network, you're probably going to want to be a bit more stealthier and use this one. Now, in terms of identifying and enumerating, the services that are on ports. You can use what is called the SV switch, which is the version detection switch. And let me make sure that I wanted to make sure that I had that properly. What this does is it verifies or tries to verify the version of the service running. And this is important. I recommend you use this because if you just do one of these without that, let's say that I have a server and I want to make sure that I have a service running on a different port. And I put a different service on a different port to run on that. If you don't run it, let's say that you have a different service running on port 80 rather than HTTP. If you run these, they're going to assume that HTTP is running. If you do this, however, it's going to look into what actual service is running. So I recommend that you do this on an actual production environment. But here, we're not going to change anything, so it really doesn't matter. But this does give us a bit more verbose information. And then in terms of ports, we can use the -P. We can select a single port. We can put multiple ports with commas. We can do a range of ports. If we want to do all the ports, it's P or it's -P-. And then if we want to do the top ports, which Nmap has a list of what they consider the top ports, you could do top ports 100, top ports 10, top ports 45, whatever you want. You can put that in there. So let's play around with this and let's do a scan on those IPs that we have collected. So let's do Nmap and let's do our standard SYN scan. And let's say that we want to do for the ports, let's actually just do top ports. And to make this quick, we'll just do the top 10 ports and then we'll do our IP addresses. Now in terms of the IP addresses, we can actually refer to a list. I believe this is a switch. And then we can say root, desktop, if I can type, Nmap scan. And I believe this is switch. We'll see if it works in a second. This will tell us to use that list. If we hit enter, and let's actually put that in here. So we'll say tell Nmap to use a file list of IPs. And that's going to be .l. So long as we have IL, and then we'll just say text file. We'll just say file name actually. So long as we have it in that format where we have the different IPs, or if we're following their syntax, and there's multiple different types of syntax with commas and so forth, and I'll demonstrate that in a second. It'll use that. So we just did a basic scan here, and what we can do is we can actually take this information and start enumerating the systems. And I'm not going to actually going to, so we're going to see our .4 machine, our .5 machine, and our .6 machine, and we're not going to do .7. Why is that? Because .7 is our actual Kali machine, right? So if you remember, this machine here is going to be our .6, which we see right there. This machine here is going to be our .4 that we see up at the top, and this machine is going to be our .5. So we're really only interested in the .5 machine, the .4 machine, and the .6 machine, right? We don't really want to scan our host machine. So we can actually go to that list, and we'll amend it in 1 second. So let's open up a secondary terminal, and let's do an ls-l, and let's use Nano, our Nano text editor. Let's open this up, and let's go down to the .7. We'll get rid of it. Control X to exit and save it. Say yes, hit enter, and let's now cat that file. And you're going to notice that now it's only those 3 IP addresses. So we're not worried about our other system, meaning our Kali system. So now we can actually run this again, but I'm going to go a bit further. Now what we're going to do is we're going to put in the SV into here as well. And let's modify this. Let's say, let's scan the top 50 ports, and we'll put the SV switch in there for version detection, and let's let it run. Now, as it's running, we can actually take this command, we can copy it, and we can open up Zenmap. In Zenmap, we'll just go ahead and make this full screen while that's running. Zenmap allows you to put the target or multiple targets up in here, and it has different profiles of scans. So you'll notice that you're going to see switches similar to what we're doing. So here's the ping scan, the .sn. We did SS, which is a sends port, and then we did an SN earlier. But we can also just get rid of this and paste it into here. And let's just do this on one system. And we'll do an SV as well. And let's just say we want to do 168.0.4, and we can scan that system. And it looks like it threw a little bit of an error here. Let's see what happens. Let's get rid of the top ports. And now let's run it. Oh, and I know exactly why. It's because I still have the IL in there. So that was the reason why. Let's do the SV, and now let's do it. So definitely, if you take the file out of there, you got to get rid of the IL switch. .4, and now let's run the scan. Now it's going to run the scan. You can go to the scan details, and it'll show you. Here's the one that failed because I kept the IL in there, forgot to remove it, but this one is running, so we'll let it run. Now it's unsaved, so now we can go to the Nmap output for just this one system that we ran this scan on. We ran the send scan, we're doing version detection and the top 50 ports, and you're going to notice that it found a great deal of information. It found several ports that appear to be open, the version of those ports, and it says metasplittable.local domain. So again, that gives us information regarding this as well. We'll also do an OS detection scan. So if we take a look at this, we can click on the ports. We can click on the topology. If you're scanning a bunch of addresses, they'll show up into here. Click on the host details. If we do OS enumeration, that'll show up. So this allows you to have scans in a GUI interface. Exact same output as what we have over here, but just a different interface. So let's go ahead and let's just go back to here for now. And you're going to notice that exact same type of an output. Now again, we could take this scan, and let me actually clear the page to clean it up. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to redirect this to, again, I know we're on the desktop, but I always like to make sure, and we'll say nmap _ service scan. And we're going to save this as a text file. And the reason that we are saving this as a text file is I do want to put it into here. I want to save it and put it into here. But I notice when I cut and paste directly out of terminal, it's not always the, I guess, the nicely formatted version that you'd want. So it's finished. You can go ahead and slide this over, and you'll notice that here is that scan. So if we take this, and I'll have it just open on this side of the page, and we'll have this one open here. So what we can do is, here's the information we enumerated for our .4 IP address. We can take this and we can copy this information that we now know about the system, put it into here, and now we have it available to us. So we can do it for the .5. So here's our .5 system. And after I paste these in, I do want to go back to here and I want to show you some information on this. And let's go ahead and let's do this system as well. So we can go ahead and we can save this. I know this didn't save this in the perfect formatting, but in other systems it seems to work just fine, and it looks like this one may just be scrolling over. So we have this saved in Cherry Tree, which is always nice to have, but let's go back to here. Let's make this full screen. So on the scan that we saved to this text file, we can notice that on this machine, the service info, it tells us that it's Metasploitable. This one, even though we didn't do an OS scan, well, we have a good idea that this is XP. And then the last one, we have an idea that it's Linux as well, which we know. Because the OS Broken Web Apps, that is Linux, Metasploitable is Linux, and this is XP version 2. We also have an idea of all the ports that are open on these machines and the version of those ports. And this is important for once you move on to the vulnerability phases and the exploitation phases, because we take this information, we look for vulnerabilities. If we find vulnerabilities, then we look to exploit them. So let's go ahead and close this. Let's go back to Nmap, and we've done our port scan. Now let's go a step further and let's do an operating system enumeration. So we can actually take that and we can just amend that scan a bit further. I am going to show you one more thing in here. There are timings, so we're not actually going to do that in the scan, but you'll see anywhere from T0 to T5. This is how fast the scan runs. T0 is going to be the slowest and the most stealthiest scan. T5 is going to be the fastest and most aggressive. So you can put those in there if you want them to run faster or slower in a scan that you're doing. And if you're doing actual pen tests, if you wanted to be stealthy, you may do something like a T1, a T2, or T0. If you're in an environment like this, and I just wanted to scan one of the machines really quick, I could add in a T5. So anyways, let's go back to here and let's add in a -O. And what this does is this tells it to look to enumerate the operating system. Now, one thing I didn't put into here is that sometimes it won't be able to find exactly what the operating system is. And if that's the case, if it says too many matches for us to determine, you can add in the --os scan guess. And so let's take a look at our file. That should now include that. So here's the output, and it's going to tell us there's some additional information now. This system that we think is the Metasploitable machine is running Linux 2.6.x. And the other system down here, well, it was able to enumerate that. Now it tells us that, you'll notice right here, Service Pack 2. But it also says that it potentially could be Windows Server 2003 down here. And we can actually go a step further with this. We'll do the OS scan guess as well. And then if we look down at the bottom one, it says Linux version potentially 2.6.17 to 2.6.36. So let's close this text file. Let's go back to Nmap, and we're going to type in this OS scan guess to tell it to try to guess it. So we're just going to add that in. We're going to run this one more time, and this is going to give us some additional information just to help us verify what those operating systems are. And then we can take that additional information, we can put it into here, and we have a very good idea of what the operating system is. So let me go ahead and minimize that font. Let's pull this up again. And let's take a look. So if we take a look at all of this, this one has an idea of what it is. This one, it still is not entirely able to determine one or the other, but it still has an idea. And then this one as well, it's the same thing. So let's actually go back into here, because it typically should. And let's make this full screen. We're just going to say top 5, and we're going to do and let me make sure that I have Nmap scan. So let's run this again. And I just wanted to make sure. And oddly enough, this time it says there are too many specific details, but in the previous scans, where we ended up scanning more ports, it gave us more detail. It was able to actually enumerate the operating system much better. So based upon what the scan involves, what you're noticing here, where we're only scanning 5 ports, for our .5 machine, it wasn't able to actually enumerate that. So if we actually went back to here, and we did top 100, so the more ports that you scan, the more information that it's going to gain on the system. What you're going to notice, now we scanned 50. Now we have that additional information here, and it's able to enumerate. Still, it's unable to tell the difference between XP and 2003. So let's go ahead and close out terminal, because we do have that previous information saved in our text file. And what I want to do before I end this video, and I thought this video was going to be shorter than it is, but that's okay. What we want to do now is we want to take this general purpose device information. Let's go ahead and add it to here. And now, for future videos in this series, we have some baseline information on these 3 systems. Now, we didn't spend too much time in the Zenmap interface, because I wanted to make sure that we actually worked in the command line interface. But I mean, if you wanted to, we could do the entire subnet. And let's just pick one of their profiles. So let's just say that we want to do an intent scan. Again, you could utilize this and you can run scans on the entire network. Again, you're going to notice that some of them are going to take longer than others, but you can use some of the predefined profiles that they have in here, or you can build out your own in here as well. And you're going to notice that they use T4 timing here, so it's supposed to be a fairly aggressive and fast scan. One we didn't talk about is -A. This is essentially multiple different features, several of them that we included in this video, placed into here. And V is for verbose, I believe. The PN is, I believe, no ping scan. And it looks like it's essentially what we're doing here is we're doing a port scan, a very intense port scan, an operation system enumeration scan. And this one is going to take quite a fair amount of time, because I told it to do the entire subnet. But like I said, you could use the GUI interface or you could use command line. It's really up to you. You're going to get the exact same information. And I just wanted to highlight both of those. So this video is getting quite lengthy. In summary, we went over the fundamentals of Nmap. We installed Zenmap. I showed you the Zenmap interface, did a basic ping scan, and we did a port scan, and we did an OS detection scan. I talked about the timing feature as well. And hopefully by now you have just a baseline, basic idea of how to use Nmap and how we can use it to learn about our target systems. And I'll go ahead and I'll make this full screen. So for our Dart4 system, we know that this is our Metasploitable. Here's the ports and the services associated with them. The Dart5, this is going to be our Windows XP. Here's the ports that are open. Here's the services and the versions. And then the Dart6, this one, it just says Linux 2.6.x. Of course, we know that this is an OWASP machine, but it shows us the ports and the versions that are open. So anyways, that's going to conclude this video. Hopefully you guys enjoyed it. If you did, please give it a thumbs up. And if you're not subscribed, please subscribe to my channel. And I'll see you at the next video. Take care. Well, I hope that you enjoyed this video. If you did, please give it a thumbs up. Make sure you subscribe. And I look forward to seeing you guys at future videos. Take care.